All right. Going to give it just a minute or two for everyone to join, and then we'll get started. Okay, it's been a minute past, so good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are joining us from. Welcome to this fireside chat on unlocking the value of the retail edge with Kubernetes and artificial intelligence. My name is Justin Barksdale. I'm a principal architect here at Spectro Cloud. I have been in the Kubernetes slash cloud native space for about 10 years. I started out as a technical solutions architect at Cisco Systems, where I supported the cloud and compute business in the field. So I was responsible for um, helping customers understand and unlock the value of our solutions. Many of those customers were edge retail or retail customers. Edge hadn't really been very prevalent then, but many of them were or retail customers. And I was able to kind of understand what their problems were and help them with our solutions. Around a few years after that, I started working with the newly acquired Clicker team, which was an acquisition that Cisco had on application mobility between clouds. And working with that team, we started developing things like Cisco Container Platform, Internet Site Kubernetes Service. When I finished my tenure at Cisco, I was in the business helping our customers unlock the value of our solutions there. I've been at Spectro Cloud for about 2.5 years, where I've been focused mostly on the edge and edge, how we can impact our customers with edge and Kubernetes. I'm joined by my colleague, Matt Williamson from CDW. Matt, why don't you go ahead and tell us about yourself?
Yeah, sure thing. My name's Matt Williamson. I specialize in cloud native computing with a focus primarily on DevSecOps, Kubernetes, all things in between. In my day-to-day life as a solution architect with CDW, I help customers with their goals and technology, leveraging my experiences and best practices that position customers well for their current needs and future growth. I've led large-scale AI as a service initiatives for many organizations to streamline their business processes and reduce operating expenses. Today, I'm excited to talk about retail edge and the challenges that must be overcome to successfully implement this kind of solution at scale in a production environment, and most importantly, to delight those customers.
Fantastic. So, just really quick on our agenda, we're going to kind of talk about the state of edge and retail, a couple of statistics, then really dive into real AI use cases that Matt and myself have seen. Finally, we'll kind of wrap up with where does Kubernetes kind of fit in this journey? What are some of those challenges? And ultimately, how can we help? So, kind of want to start off with the fact that Edge is becoming more and more strategic with all of our customers, whether it's driving new innovation for their employees, enabling a better experience for their customers, or even just making sure that they keep up with the demands of compliance and security. We see, more than 90% of customers view that the edge is strategic in their business. You can see that the growth over the next, 2 years and certainly the next 6 years is significant. We're seeing a lot of investment from our customers in driving this. And really, one of the reasons why is because of the explosion of artificial intelligence. It's been one of the biggest drivers of innovation over the last couple of years, and the primary driver behind this is because users want to process the data closer to where the data is more meaningful. And over the last 2 years, there was a statistic by Forbes that said 90% of the information that we've or the data that we've created was has been created in the last 2 years. And so that think about that for all time, not just last decade, but in all time, 90% of the data that we've created ever was created within the last 2 years. And we're seeing more and more retailers wanting to take that information, process it locally, and then be able to deliver value back to their customers or employees. So we're going to spend the most of this chat talking about some of these use cases and kind of dive into where customers are using them, some of the challenges they face, and how we helped them in the past. So, Matt, why don't we go ahead and start talking about where loss prevention, edge, and AI have really been of value?
Yeah, that sounds great. And, I think for a lot of retailers, loss prevention is top of mind. It's an excellent candidate to start looking at AI at the edge and what that can do for you to help prevent those losses. Retailers lost $112 billion to theft in 2022, and it's expected to climb to 122 billion in 23. It's a hard problem to solve, especially for retailers with large floor spaces, many areas to tuck away product. CDW has helped some of the largest organizations in the world efficiently roll out computer vision capabilities to identify suspicious activities and drive down that shrinkage. We accomplish that through four main criteria, one being surveillance, facial recognition, behavior analysis, and inventory monitoring. If we start with surveillance, unlike traditional methods that rely heavily on a human staring at a screen, we're able to, in real time, identify suspicious activity. This may be things like concealing product, just behaving in an abnormal way that you wouldn't expect a typical shopper to behave. The second would be facial recognition. This becomes a very powerful tool in the analysis of loss prevention. I'm sure we've all been to stores and there's a picture behind the counter of, don't sell product to this person, something like that. Leveraging the power of Edge and specifically AI, we can start to do facial recognitions as people enter stores and identify those high risk individuals and potentially repeat offenders where we can have staff be more any number of preventative measures can take place once we have that facial recognition happening in real time.
Hey, Matt, just a
Furthermore,
question
it does.
around. Yep, sorry, just to
Sure.
interrupt for a second. When you implemented something like that, what were some of the challenges from the customer side as it relates to like facial recognition?
Sure. It's everything related to that real-time analysis. So facial recognition, there has to be the appropriate hardware that's fast enough to process that video stream in real time to identify those users. It has to be clear enough to ensure that the identification is accurate. Um, and all of those things boil down to, do you have a model that's been purpose-built and trained to perform that facial recognition at scale, at the speed that that stream is flowing in? Those are all challenges that we see on a pretty consistent basis across our customer base.
Was the model something that CDW provided, or was it something that was off the shelf and tweaked, or how did that sort of come about?
Yeah, it's really a combination of both. You find open source models available. There's very popular platforms like Hugging Face. That's an orchestration tool to give you open source models that are provided by some of the largest organizations in the world. And then those models can be fine tuned to further refine the behavior that happens within those models, such as the responses that they provide as part of the inference that's happening in real time. And it can also be models that are trained from the ground up with data sets that are collected and provided by organizations that they then use to deploy to their stores for whatever use case they would like to see.
Okay, okay, perfect. Please continue.
Yeah, and so we can take that surveillance a step further and we start looking at things like behavior analysis. Behavior analysis could be anything from loitering in high risk areas where, we see a high likelihood of some kind of theft happening. It could be just, ducking around corners, whatever type of behavior has been trained inside of this model to predict, some kind of behavior that we wouldn't like to see. Those can be flagged inside of computer vision models and help us identify those high risk patrons that we need to pay closer attention to.
And as you implemented these, was it kind of over time, or was it just like a wholesale change for a particular store? And if over time, or either way, what was the kind of impact overall to them?
Yeah, we typically see these roll out in phased approaches. We like to do a priority list of the areas of impact that an organization might see the highest benefit from rolling these kinds of capabilities out. And then we move through that process methodically. We have to In most cases, update the hardware that's inside of their store to support this new capability, whether it's deploying these edge devices that are orchestrated through a platform like Kubernetes. Um, and then what was the second question? I'm sorry.
No, no, I was just like from an impact perspective, was there immediate impact to the customers and being able
Oh,
to see
absolutely.
value?
Yeah, the impact here is typically immediate, and the reason for that is you have a system that's consistently and continually monitoring the entire store, not just one particular monitor at a time, so they get a more holistic view of what's happening in real time, and they can take action immediately where there are issues appearing.
Okay. Okay, interesting, interesting. How does so from an AI perspective that's around loss prevention and image recognition and things like that, behavior recognition, how does that how would the edge be impacted by digital signage?
Yeah, that's a great question. Digital signage is an area that we're really excited about. We've done a lot of work with organizations like convenience stores, and it really focuses around perishable items. So a use case that we recently solved was around things like hot dogs, for example. If you have a hot dog that's sitting and it's aging on a conveyor belt, for lack of a better word, those are things that we can leverage digital signage to be more proactive in driving costs down, trying to move that product off the shelf so that we're not seeing them spoil and then we have to ultimately throw them away at the end of the day. We can be, monitoring those things in real time, updating signage to make sure that the price is driven down to a level that customers, purchase them before they expire. Um, and we're seeing those use cases across the board. Another common one that we've solved for um, would be things like driving bundled packaging. So if we have meats, for example, is another common use case that we see in grocery stores. um, where the meat may be approaching its sell by date, we can start to do more of a bundled opportunity where we're saying, buy a steak and also buy barbecue sauce, and you can see a bundled cross promotion opportunity and a reduced price as a result of that.
It's interesting. I when you were talking about the expiration component, I've also seen some use cases at retail locations where because of certain governance or like government policies, they can only hold food for a specific period of time, and so they used to have, as an example, timers where some employee had to, when they cooked it, they had to put it on a timer for a period of time and had to remember to hit the button. And if they had multiple areas of holding, then you had to kind of keep track of all that. And this particular customer implemented the ability to look at from computer vision, monitor their warming trays when they were put in, set the timer automatically, and kind of take that onus off the employee, which really allowed the employee to do other things and focus on other areas like customer experience. So it was really quite interesting to see some little use case like that that I probably would have never thought of being used in such an impactful way. So that's really interesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and another way that I've seen this used in my local grocer is really around wayfinding, and it's kind of wayfinding in a couple of different ways. When we say wayfinding, it's the ability to provide customers with access to where something might be in the store. So that's kind of one mechanism, and they do this through a combination of computer vision, and there's some overlays they can put in the layout of their stores, and then being able to, from a smart app or a smartphone, direct customers to where that particular object or particular thing they're looking for might live, aisle, whatever, those types of things. But we also see that value unlocks something for the actual retailer as well, because they can, based on traffic patterns, determine where product placement might be. So they can, you know, during the Super Bowl, might want to put their chips and finger foods and stuff in an area that drives customers past other complementary products, so that they drive up their sort of attach rate is much higher. So I've seen this in a couple of different ways, and wayfinding unlocks a lot of different doors, but really you can't do that in the cloud. So it requires you to have something on-prem, in the store, that's processing this real time and being able to provide instant feedback to those customers. So, and I think having that on-prem sort of real-time experience also drives into the frictionless shopping checkout experience. Maybe talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, and that's a huge one where we're seeing a lot of opportunity within the retail space. It gives a lot of benefits, but it presents a lot of challenges that have to be overcome. For example, that's fewer lines, there's less waiting, there's a more personalized shopping journey. The only way that this kind of solution is that it can be delivered is through something that's at the edge, that's monitoring these things in real time, that's making inferences about what's happening, and able to take action if there's something that's going on. We have to do things like surveillance and tracking. As customers are moving through the store, having computer vision that identifies the objects that they're picking up. Did they put them in their cart? Did they put them back down? We need to have object recognition for things like identification. What was this object? What did they grab? What are they doing with it? And then you need to have integration into things like mobile apps. It takes it a step further and it leverages a lot of the use cases that you were just talking about with wayfinding, where a user is traveling through a store, they find what they're looking for, they pick it up, they place it in their cart. Instantly, they see that appear inside of their mobile application where they know what the total content of their cart would be for that particular shopping experience.
Do you find customers adopt maybe one of these, and then that kind of opens the door for them to add on? And when they do add on, is it as simple as, just doing some more configuration, or is there often more, hardware, or how does that sort of scale, when you start adding these things together? I can just imagine the amount of, resources that might be required, or maybe it's not very high. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, it's the fun answer of it depends. It depends on the kind of compute, the inference that's happening with the models that are deployed, and how they progress through that edge journey. So if you have models, for example, that are very high in inference and they're taking a lot of compute, you're going to have to deploy new hardware to help facilitate whatever you're trying to drive within that in-store experience. A recent example that we've come across, it's really merging a legacy technology with a more advanced computer vision, which is a really interesting one that I was speaking with one of our field CTOs about yesterday. And it relates to traditional weighing of organic fruits, for example. There is a major price difference between an organic apple and a non-organic apple. Conceptually, they weigh roughly the same, and there really isn't a big indicator to let us know if something were to happen. For example, a user would take the sticker off of a non-organic apple, stick it on an organic apple, scan it, and move on about their day. What we're seeing is a convergence of computer vision with that weighing system that is virtually unfoolable. As you scan an apple, it would go through the weighing methodology. It would tell you, yeah, this is roughly the size, roughly the weight that an apple should weigh. But then through computer vision, we're able to identify things like labeling, packaging, things that would certainly identify this as a more premium product. And if a user were to scan that as a basic item, it wouldn't pass those two, think of them as authentication factors as they're going through that checkout process. So it gives a retailer far more peace of mind to that self checkout experience, what's happening, and the capability is only possible because we're marrying that old just simple weighing technology with computer vision identifying and validating what's happening.
That's interesting. I've also seen some other retailers who are starting to enable things like digital twin, having virtual layouts of their stores in the cloud, and they can monitor and view things like inventory control, and they're able to, really understand, well, a lot of the inventory over here is being purchased, none of it over here. And so understanding that whole customer experience and how to make it better in a 3D digital world. Maybe talk a little how customer experience has been personalized with the advent of computer vision and things like that at the edge.
Yeah, and it dives into what you were talking about with some of that wayfinding, the optimal journey that a customer would go through as they're going through a purchasing process. I think about my experience when I go to a hardware store, for example, and I know that I'm installing a door, for example, and I go to purchase the door only to walk all the way across the store to purchase the screws that I need to install that door. In that kind of experience, we can identify those related items and have things flow in a more expected manner, so users aren't traveling or they're passing things that we know would be part of that purchasing process.
Yeah, along those lines, we've had some conversations with some retailers and also understanding not just what you're building. So you mentioned like the door and some screws, but also understanding what's your skill level. And we kind of can get a grasp on, well, you've done handyman projects like this before, so you probably have some expertise. You don't need to buy a hammer or drill or whatever.
Absolutely.
But maybe you're doing a tiling project and you've never purchased anything from this store related to tile. They can suggest things like, oh, did you get the grout? Did you get the sponge or whatever else is needed to do that?
Yep.
And that way you're not making multiple trips. My wife always says it's not a successful home project unless you've made 3 trips to the hardware store. So
Yeah,
um, that's
absolutely.
that's kind of our benchmark. The
Yeah.
other area I think that I've seen, and there's so many. I mean, we could talk probably all day about this, but the other area that I've seen of interest is also in inventory collection. So a lot of retailers have just-in-time inventory. There is no back room, no stock room. They order when they run out, and it's kind of a somewhat manual process to validate what the computers are saying. Yes, did they buy ten bottles of shampoo that are gone, or did they get moved to another section or whatever? And I've seen customers or retailers start to use computer vision to aid them in collecting inventory so that when this spot on the shelf is missing, um, they can quickly reorder whatever it was that was supposed to be in that place, or maybe that item that was on that part of the shelf has now been moved because the customer didn't want it, and they that just kind of set it because they didn't know where to put it, or whatever. That gives them the opportunity to, oh, no, we have some more of these, they're just put over here, we can put those back, and
Right.
really enhancing that just in time inventory. And I think really ultimately just driving a better shopping experience for our customers. So it's very, very interesting. So I think, what are the challenges that we see at the edge really focus on 5 areas. And, especially when it relates to why Kubernetes and how Kubernetes enables these functionalities. We talked about AI. Why are people leveraging Kubernetes at the edge to deploy those types of applications? A lot of it has to do with they want to continue the same kind of cloud native development that they've been doing, and they want to be able to patch more quickly, less um, monolithic application patching, which takes down a store for hours and hours, more of that. But when you start deploying these devices at the edge, some of these challenges, things like skill set, the retail store manager probably doesn't know much about Kubernetes. Maybe they do, but probably not. Um, as we probably all are aware, connectivity is inconsistent. Maybe you have internet all the time. Maybe you have locations that are still running on, copper wire in a shopping center that's very old, and it disconnects for hours at a time. You need to be able to really make sure that you can support that. The technology is relatively complex in terms of all of the pieces fitting together, making AI run on top of Kubernetes with applications that have to run alongside and get information from each of those. It's complex, and it's measured even more when you talk about scale. We're not talking about a data center or 2 data centers. We're talking about thousands of locations, and so really being able to repeatedly deploy those types of models or those types of configurations across 1,000 locations or 10,000 locations is something that is an absolute must. And then I think ultimately security. Everything needs to be secured. What happens if someone takes my box with my customer information or my model? You spent a lot of money or a lot of time training the model to be what you want. You don't want someone else to get a hold of that. It's kind of your intellectual property. And so I think enabling these kinds of things in the retail stores, in the edge, is challenging, but there are solutions that do it. And maybe Matt, us talking about kind of what we provide in terms of where people can go for their next steps when we wrap up this here. Tell us a little more about what CDW is offering.
Yeah, CDW is an expert in both sides of the spectrum. when it comes to getting this hardware into your stores, how to fit it. Is it custom? Is there a very limited, you spoke about a tiny little cabinet that may be the only storage that we have to fit this device that's going to be powering these edge solutions. That's where CDW excels, being able to identify those hardware requirements, what kind of specs each of these devices needs to correctly run the services that we're looking to run on them, and getting that deployed out to every one of those edge locations. Once they're deployed, leveraging a solution like a Spectro Cloud where it allows for resiliency, failover, it can stay up to date quickly and efficiently. And then our services would be overlaid on top of all of that using Spectro Cloud as that backend service that does the orchestration for configuration, model generation, building, overall configuration and infrastructure layouts. All of that can be leveraged and facilitated by CDW as part of our services.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, and we've partnered together on several accounts, and several customers had a lot of success. I think the area, we see Edge as being this driving factor in unlocking data for customers and unlocking better customer experiences for their customers. Um, our focus has been on providing the Kubernetes deployment, the application models for AI, application models for your applications themselves, all in a very consistent manner, regardless of where you may be deploying that, whether that's in a maybe always connected environment that has great internet connectivity, or an environment that doesn't have any internet connectivity. It could be an air gapped, maybe a pop-up cart or something that doesn't talk to the internet. You need to have a similar experience as what they might have in your store. So that's been our focus in working with CDW. I think, as we wrap up here, if anybody on the, wants to kind of look through, click on the QR codes as action as your next steps. I think that'd be great. Matt, anything that you want to add before we wrap up?
No, no, I think it's been a great discussion. I appreciate having the opportunity to talk through what Retail Edge looks like, some use cases that we've delivered, and how Spectral Cloud can help.
Sounds great. Well, with that, I think we will wrap up for the day. Thank you very much for everyone joining. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Take care, everybody.